Daddy, please don't leave me. Not today. Not like this. Those words tore out of Maya Richardson's chest as she clutched her father's shirt, her tears soaking into the thin hospital blanket that barely covered his fragile body. The heart monitor beside them screamed, then stuttered, then fell silent. In that cold white room that smelled of disinfectant and endings, the only man who had ever loved her without conditions took his final breath. And Maya didn't know it yet, but in less than 24 hours, she would lose her husband too. At the time, all she knew was the unbearable weight on her chest, the way grief pressed down so hard she thought it might crush her unborn child along with her heart. 6 months pregnant, exhausted, hollowed out by weeks of hospital nights, Maya laid her head on her father's chest and listened to the silence where his heartbeat used to be. James Richardson had been everything to her, her whole world, her safe place. He was the man who braided her hair before school, who packed her lunches with handwritten notes, who showed up to every recital straight from work in his janitor's uniform, still smelling of floor cleaner and effort. The man who raised her alone after her mother died giving birth, who never complained, never asked for anything, never made her feel like she was too much. And now he was gone. Before the nurses gently pulled her away, before they covered his face, James had used the last of his strength to press an envelope into her trembling hand. His voice had barely been more than air when he whispered, "Baby girl, when I'm gone, open this and remember, you are never alone. You are never poor. You are never powerless. I made sure of that." She hadn't understood then. She barely heard it through the sobbing. All she felt was loss. The funeral came the next morning under a sky that matched her heart. Gray, heavy, unforgiving. Rain soaked through her black dress as she stood at the edge of her father's grave, one hand on her belly, the other clutching his worn jacket. The dirt was still fresh, clinging under her fingernails from when she'd placed yellow roses on his casket just moments before. Marcus stood beside her, but not really with her. He held the umbrella over his own head, checked his phone, sighed impatiently as if grief were an inconvenience. When it was over, he kissed her forehead quickly, said he had somewhere to be, and walked away without looking back. That should have been the moment she knew her marriage was already over. But grief makes you slow. It makes you cling to illusions, because the truth feels like too much to survive. Maya went back to her father's tiny apartment that night. She sat on his couch, wrapped in his jacket, breathing in the fading scent of Irish Spring soap and old coffee. She replayed his last words again and again. The envelope sat unopened on the table in front of her, her hands shaking every time she looked at it. Her phone buzzed. A notification. Marcus had been tagged in a photo. Her heart sank before she even opened it. There he was, smiling in a way he hadn't smiled at her in months. His arm was wrapped around a beautiful woman in a red dress. Vanessa Chen. The woman he'd called his boss. The woman he'd said was just a colleague. The caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings." Maya scrolled. More photos. Older ones. Proof of a betrayal that had been happening while her father was dying. While she was pregnant. While she was begging her husband to sit with her in a hospital room. She ran to the bathroom and vomited until her throat burned. That night, Marcus didn't come home. The next morning, he arrived late on purpose, wearing expensive cologne and holding a manila folder. He sat across from her at the kitchen table and told her he was leaving. Told her he'd fallen in love with someone else. Told her it wasn't working anymore. Told her she'd changed since getting pregnant, since her father got sick, like grief and motherhood were personal flaws. He slid divorce papers across the table. Maya didn't cry. She felt numb, empty, like she was watching someone else's life fall apart. The end of the day, Marcus was gone. And by the next morning, Maya stood in a courthouse parking lot, 6 months pregnant, wearing funeral black, watching her husband sign a marriage license with Vanessa. Less than 24 hours after her father was buried. Less than 24 hours after he promised to love her forever. Vanessa smiled when she saw Maya. Smiled like she'd won. Maya clutched the envelope in her hands so tightly it crumpled. She felt small, disposable, forgotten. As if the universe had taken everything good and left her with nothing but grief and betrayal. She didn't know that in 2 hours and 47 minutes, everything would change. She drove straight from the courthouse to the bank her father had mentioned, First National, Safety Deposit Box 1247. Her hands shook so badly, she could barely sign her name. The banker returned with a key. Inside the box was a neatly organized stack of documents, legal papers thicker than anything Maya had ever seen, and a handwritten letter in her father's careful script. She read the letter first. "My baby girl, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And I'm so sorry I had to leave you before meeting my grandchild. But listen to me now, like you always did. Everything I did, every sacrifice I made, was to protect you. I saw what was coming. I saw the way your husband's love faded when life got hard. I made sure that when he walked away from you, not your future. You are the sole beneficiary of an irrevocable trust valued at $5.2 billion. No spouse, no ex, no one can ever touch it. This was never about money. This was about freedom, about safety, about making sure my little girl never had to beg the world to treat her right. Live with kindness, live with courage, and remember, character matters more than cash. I love you beyond measure. Dad." Maya couldn't breathe. $5.2 billion. Her father, the janitor who worked Christmas shifts and ate ramen so she could have dance lessons, had been a secret billionaire. James Hartwell III. He had walked away from an empire to raise her in love instead of luxury. The lawyer explained the trust, the protections, the planning done weeks before his death. Bulletproof, untouchable. Maya cried harder than she had at the funeral. Not from shock, from love. He had protected her even from the grave. 3 days later, Marcus found out. Vanessa found out. The scream that echoed through that courthouse parking garage was raw and panicked and full of regret. Marcus's face went white as he realized what he had done, who he had left, what he had lost. "Oh my God," Vanessa cried, "you divorced a billionaire." But it was too late. Maya didn't answer their calls. She didn't need to. She had already outgrown them. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Wealth didn't erase grief. Money didn't bring her father back. But something inside her shifted. She stood taller. She spoke firmer. She stopped apologizing for taking up space. She moved into a modest home near a park. She finished her degree. She started a foundation in her father's name, funding education for children whose parents worked invisible jobs, just like his. She raised her daughter, surrounded by love, not lies. And years later, when her little girl asked about her grandfather, Maya told her the truth. She told her about a man who chose love over billions, who proved that wealth isn't what you own, but who you are when no one is watching. If you've ever felt abandoned, betrayed, or underestimated, this story is for you. Sometimes the people who leave your life are not losses. They are blessings in disguise. They make room for the truth, for your strength, for the future you were meant to have. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that good people are still protected in this world, hit like and subscribe. And in the comments, honor the person who loved you when no one else did. Because real love never dies. It protects, it prepares, and it lives on, even from the grave.